step I take forward, the past tries to follow, reminding me of what I have been. Mistakes and transgressions, those unlearned lessons have gone through time and again. I know God can't recall what He's cast in the sea. That's easy for Him and so hard for me. But there'll come a day when I see Him in glory, then I'll only recall Calvary's side of my story, where my sins were forgiven, my salvation was bought. Oh, what a moment when I can remember everything He forgot. I know He saved me, I know He forgave me. The past is the past with Him. But guilt reminds me to look behind me. My regrets want me to spend time with them. But when I stand in His presence and He says, welcome home, every memory of failure and sin will be gone. And there'll come a day when I see Him in glory, then I'll only recall Calvary's side of my story, where my sins were forgiven, my salvation was bought. Oh, what a moment when I can remember everything He forgot. Oh, there'll come a day when I see Him in glory, and I'll only recall Calvary's side of my story, where my sins were forgiven, my salvation was bought. Oh, what a moment when I can't remember. Oh, what a moment when I can't remember everything He forgot. Everything He forgot. He was a troubled kid, in and out of jail. When his daddy said, this is the last time I'll pay bail. So he enlisted in the army, and they sent him to Iraq. He was a different man when he came back. Some people said the army must have whipped you into shape, but he said that's not the reason that I've changed. Somebody died for me before I even asked for help, gave his life for me. flag and attach a silver star. As the grieving mother leans against his arm, then he stands before the family and does his best to tell how he survived the night his best friend fell. No one who ever knew him was surprised he died that way. He always lived for Jesus.
All right, good evening. Find your places, and let's stand tonight, and let's worship the King for a little bit. Hey, Pastor, good to see you. There is an endless song Echoes in my soul. Let's have everyone singing it tonight. Come on now. There is an endless song. There is an endless song. Echoes in my soul. I hear the music ring. And though the storms may come, I am holding on to the rock I cling. How can I keep? Pick it up now. And how can I keep from singing your praise? How can I ever say enough? How amazing is your love? How can I keep from shouting your name? I know I am loved by the King, and it makes my heart want to sing. I will lift mine eyes, and I will lift my eyes in the darkest night. For I know my Savior lives, and I will walk with you, knowing you see me through, and sing the songs you give. And how can I keep from singing your praise? How can I ever say enough? How amazing is your love? How can I keep from shouting your name? I know I am loved by the King, and it makes my heart want to sing.
Good evening and welcome to the Sunday evening service. We got quite the crowd here tonight. Thank you for coming out. And it's good. We have celebrity Christian author Cary Schmidt, I guess, packed this place out. And we're excited to hear from him tonight. And thank you for joining us. We'll make sure everybody gets a seat when we sit down here in just a minute. If we need to add some more chairs and other spots, we'll get all of that taken care of. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. God, I thank you for the joy that it is to be called your child. Lord, I thank you the gift of the gospel that it is in our lives. And I pray tonight that each one of us would grow in our understanding of who you are and what you've done for us. And God, most importantly, grow in our love and relationship with you because of what we hear tonight. I pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. You may be seated. As you're seated, if you have a seat near you, first of all, in any of the tables that is not being used, would you slip your hand up? We've got one right here if there's a single person wants to sit, and one right there. We've got two folks here. We've got one over here so we've got a bunch of singles. Keep your hands up. Folks that need a single, there are two back there. And then we're setting up some more chairs along the back. And how many do we have over here? We've got two in tables right here. So if there's two people that want to be sitting at a table the rest of the time, you can get up right now and slide over there. There are some singles where you can sit down and have a table in front of you as you're taking notes. So we've got two back there. We've got one here. And we'll make sure we'll get some more chairs if we need to over here where the Wilsons are. And we just set up another row back there. Let me just see. How many do we need? Is there room for chairs where you're at? Tia, Kyle? Let's get another Jason. Oh, they're bringing a row right there. All right, we'll get that set up there. And then, Jay, right behind you, there's a stack of the notes. If we can split those, Todd, Ryan, Javen. And for folks that are sitting in chairs, let's make sure they've got a copy of these. Everybody at a table has one already. Go to the folks that are sitting in chairs without a table in front of them. And so if they need a copy of the notes, make your way over here. Make sure everybody's got that. The way that tonight's going to work is pretty quick. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to shut up and get out of the way. And I want Pastor Cary to take the bulk of this time. We've been talking about this for a while in our church, and I'm so excited that you get to hear from him. The material that you're going to be hearing, it's from the Scriptures. I was going to say it's from his book. It's really from the Bible. It's where it's from, and of course. But Cary last year published a book entitled Stop Trying, How to Receive, Not Achieve Your Identity. And you know, sometimes Paul said it this way to the Galatian Christians, Having begun in the Spirit, are you now made perfect in the flesh? Sometimes we get the idea that salvation is free, but then we've got to earn our way with God the rest of the way. We got to kind of help him along, and he'll love us more if we just do a little more. And so tonight's going to talk about where our identity is found. We don't work for God's love, we work from God's love. And so Pastor Cary is going to take, the format will be, we'll be together for a session here. Then we'll take about a 5-minute break, and if we need to, guys, yeah, it looks like you're doing that. We can take those tables, Marquise, the snacks, maybe right outside if we need to, and folks can go out and we'll get that set up. But we're going to have one session, then about a 5-minute break, then a second session, and our church has purchased a copy of his new book, one per family for everyone that's here, every family unit. And so if like our family will get one, if you're a single adult here, you'll take one, whatever the case may be, one per family unit tonight. And we want you to take that, and I hope that tonight will spur you to spend some time reading it and really grow in our understanding, our knowledge of who Christ is and what it means to us. And I see a couple of pastor friends that are here. Pastor Adam Shampsony, who preached for us last month. Adam and Jordana right here. We welcome you. And then Justin and Honey Reed. I'm looking. I saw them, and then I lost them. I'm not sure where they ended up. And they're dropping off kids at the nursery. I saw them getting some things settled in here. There's Honey right there. And good to have the Reeds from I was going to say Carson. That's not right. Torrance. And glad that you're here. Is there any other pastor that's here tonight? Any other lead pastor of a church? I think those two. And we welcome you. Those that are here, the bulk of us, of course, from Liberty, and a few other friends of ours, Christians from the area, Southern California, that have made their way. We welcome you to church tonight. And I hope this seminar will be a help and a blessing to you. I think we're doing pretty good. Got most folks that want a seat. And if we need to, Jay, we can set up some more back in that corner. Some more folks show up there. And I think that's it. We ready? All right, you're up, Cary.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. I realize it is a sacrifice, and some of you were here Thursday, and then Friday, and then Saturday, and then this morning, and you're stuck with me for 2 more hours, and it has been such a joy to be here. I told Ryan, I struggle with envy when I come here because of the sunshine and the good weather and the beautiful campus, and it's good. God's breaking me in that way because I have an old church building and we have nasty weather, but I love where I live. I just love Orange County too. You know what I miss about California other than sunshine? I miss sunshine. We see the sun a couple times a year, but I just miss it. I really miss In-N-Out burgers. So when I come to California, oh my goodness. I've been multiple times in the last few days. Anyway, it's really good to be here. And I want to set up where we're going and kind of give you an overview. My heart is full, and I just have prayed all afternoon that this will start a journey for you. That's what I'm going to try to do is start a journey of you understanding the concepts that are before us. This for me has been it's been my whole life in some sense, but it's been 12 years of what I'm going to specifically unfold tonight and trying to wrap my brain around the work of God in my own life. And as these truths became clearer to me, I'll tell you where we're going, okay? This is thoroughly scriptural. So that's first and foremost. The scriptures are authority for this. You're going to see this clearly in Scripture. But what made this functional in my life, and still functional, I'm still early on the journey of what we're going to talk about tonight, is that we're going to stand at the intersection of gospel theology and then philosophy, secular philosophy, and a little bit of psychology. And when I say psychology, I don't mean theoretical psychology. I mean how our psyche works. And so when we use the idea of identity, that word is not particularly in Scripture. That's really a 21st century concept that will unfold. but it is thoroughly a scriptural concept. And so we're going to take biblical truth. I'm not going to say anything new tonight. I'm not going to say anything that you don't already know. I'm going to say it in with different terms, and hopefully turn the prism a little bit and let you see it through a lens. That when I saw it through this lens, it was like, oh, it was like a light bulb came on that never went off. And suddenly it illuminated a part of my life that I had never really considered, okay? And I really believe we're going to talk about a work that God does, frankly, in everybody's life, okay? So I want you to begin with me in Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8. And while you're going to Mark 8, I want to thank Ryan for just giving me this opportunity to speak to the staff, to speak to the families, to preach in church this morning, and then to do this tonight. We've talked about something like this for several years. It just didn't work. And then this year, he extended the opportunity, and we locked it in. And I'm especially excited about this. I've done this in settings with pastors, and with our church a little bit. I did a series about this, but I've never done what we're going to do tonight. And I've never had a pastor that said, we bought a quantity of the books, and we're going to hand them out. I'm not a good salesman of my own books. I hope they'll be a blessing to you. I hope this one will be a blessing to you. We're just going to skim the surface of it tonight, and I hope it will compel you to do a deeper dive into the book and into the topic. So Mark chapter 8, beginning in verse 34. And when he had called, this is Jesus, when he had called the people unto him, with his disciples also, he said unto them, whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it. Now, the background of this, if you track Jesus' ministry chronologically, which is a little bit difficult to do if you're just reading straight through the Gospels, because the Gospel writers were not trying to tell the chronological story as much as they were trying to give us vignettes and accounts that validated the identity of Jesus, leading up to his crucifixion. But the chronology generally, I'm just talking broadly, is that for the better part of the first 2 years of Jesus' ministry, he was ministering around the Sea of Galilee and in that region. It's not to say he didn't go south. In fact, when he started his ministry, he made a trip south, and he was in Jerusalem, and he cleansed the temple at the very beginning, around the time of his temptation, right when he started. But then the next long season, he was up in Capernaum and in that region and a little bit north. And his message was primarily believe. I mean, you can look at like the first 9 chapters of Luke, just over and over and over, believe in me, believe in me, believe in me. It's a simple faith, a simple gospel, a simple receive salvation message. And now they, by the thousands, people were believing in Jesus and following him, but they were believing in a Jesus, they were believing in their version of Messiah. They all had a script that they were bringing into that belief. So yeah, we believe you're the Messiah, and their version of that script was, you're going to go in and deliver us from Roman tyranny and reestablish Israel and set up a new kingdom, geopolitical. You're going to make Israel great again. That's what they thought Jesus was going to do, okay? And I'm glad you're laughing. Whatever your political ideas are, that they had this real nationalistic political idea that Jesus was going to be their next kingdom. Okay, so that's what they're believing in the Messiah, but that even his disciples, that's what they expect the Messiah to be, okay? And I think there's some strand of truth in that still in our lives today. We accept Jesus with an idea of who we think he's going to be to us, what he's going to make happen in our lives. We don't fully grasp what following him is all about, okay? Well, over time, over 2 years, as Jesus was not the conquering revolutionary, the crowds began to dwindle. And there comes this moment where he takes his disciples up to Caesarea Philippi, which is where he had the conversation with them about, who do you say that I am? And upon this rock I will build my church. And the nature of that conversation was he started to change the message. His message, his central theme, started to shift. For instance, the last year of his ministry, that's when he started teaching in parables. Why? Remember how I said, I'm teaching you in parables lest they should understand? Well, who's they? The people that had already rejected him. And so the unrepentant unbelief in their hearts, he didn't want to heap more truth on them that they would give an account for in the judgment. So he began to speak in parables. His message shifted from believe to follow. Okay? The message of belief, salvation, it's free. It's free for the taking. The message of follow is it's costly. Discipleship is going to cost you everything. And that's how the message starts to shift, okay? And this is one of the places of multiple. In each gospel, there's an account where later in his ministry, he starts looking at his followers. By the way, track Jesus' eyes when you're reading the gospels. If you don't, and that's really true for the whole Bible, if you don't know who God is talking to, then you're going to have a hard time applying the Bible to your life, okay? Because there's sometimes, and the writers are very clear, he said to the Pharisees. Okay, so now you know he's speaking to unbelieving skeptics who want him dead. And then he turns to the crowd and he speaks to the crowd. So now you know he's speaking to kind of seekers that like his miracles and his tricks, but they're undecided on his deity. And then he speaks to his disciples, and sometimes to one or two crowds at the same time. And when he's looking at his disciples, he's saying stuff like, follow me, take up your cross, lose your life, okay? So track his eyes, and his message shifts towards something deeper, something of loss, something of losing yourself, and this is going to cost you if you're really going to follow me, okay? Now, we're going to come back to this particular passage, but I want to read a couple of other places where Jesus says something similar. John 12:25, he that loveth his life shall lose it. He that hateth his life in this world shall keep it unto life eternal. Luke 9, he said unto them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. Whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. Matthew 10, he that findeth his life shall lose it. He that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Now, let me back up from these texts for a minute and start with a story. And this is the opening story of the book. We lived in Southern California for 22 years. My second son, Larry, was in his senior year. I was just coming out of my battle with cancer, and I was about 6 or 7 or 8 months out of my last treatment. It was Larry's senior year. And I had these traditions that we would make some memories when our kids are seniors, just dad and son, dad and daughter. And so this particular day, we had blocked off, we had blocked off like 3 days. We had reserved a hotel room, we had rented gear, and we were going up to Big Bear to ski, just me and him. And so we drive up, we check in at night on a Wednesday night, we wake up Thursday morning, we get our gear, we get out on the slope, we ride the lift up. Larry has skied a couple times in his life, snowboarded, I should say. I'm skiing. I haven't skied since before I had cancer, so I was kind of weak, and my muscle mass was kind of diminished. So I got on those skis. I immediately felt like I was kind of on matchsticks. I got a little bit ahead of Larry. First run down, it may have been the second run. I can't remember for sure. But I got a little bit ahead of Larry over a ridge, and I just decided to pull over and wait for him. And several minutes go by, and Larry's not there, and 15 minutes now, and he's not there. And I'm just about ready to pop my skis off and start walking back up the hill when here he comes over the ridge, and he comes down to me, and he sits down in the snow. And I thought he was adjusting his gear or his binding or something, and he sat down and he said, I fell really hard, and I think I hit my head. I said, are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay. And he was just kind of sitting there, and he goes, yeah, I think I hit my head. And he said, I have a really bad headache. I said, well, are you sure you're okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay. And then he said, hey, Dad, how long have we been here? Now, Larry's kind of a kidder, so I thought he was messing with me. And I said, what do you mean, how long have we been here? We just got here. We've been here. I said, how long do you think we've been here? He goes, it feels like a couple days to me. I said, Larry, are you messing with me? He goes, no. I just can't remember how long we've been here. So that's when I started to sense, okay, something's wrong. He said, how did we get here? I said, Larry, come on now, this isn't funny. He says, no, really, how did we get here? I don't remember. I said, okay, take your snowboard off. I think you've hurt yourself. I think you've got a concussion, and we need to go to the first aid shack. We're all the way at the top of this run. So he unlatches his gear, and I put my arm like on his arm. I'm holding him because I don't want him to slip again. And we trudge down the hill holding our gear to the first aid shack. We walk in. I say to the guys, I think he's got a concussion. They say, is he asking repeated questions? He doesn't remember the answers. I said, yes. They said, yep, concussion. You're done. Your ski day is done. You got to go to the ER. So they sent us to the hospital, a small hospital there in Big Bear, where we wait. It's about a 4-hour process. We're sitting there. They're going to do a CAT scan. The nurse comes in. She says, he's probably okay. We just have to do a CAT scan, make sure there's no bleeding internally. It's probably just a concussion, mild probably, and we're going to send you home. But right now, he's going to get nuts. He's going to get loopy. He's going to start asking you the same 15 questions over and over and over again. And don't panic. She said, a lot of people panic, and they kind of, and I said, okay. She said, you might want to write the answers down on a page and give them to him because he's going to keep asking. So sure enough, he left, and we're sitting there for an hour or two, and he keeps asking me the same questions. Why are we here? What are we doing? How did we get here? How long have we been here? What happened? And based on their assurance, this is going to sound insensitive, I just started making up stories. Just for my own entertainment value, you know. And I'm videoing his answers to the stories and sending the videos to the family, and they're laughing, you know. And so it's like, how did we get here? We drove up yesterday. What happened? We're at the doctor. What happened to me? And first time I said, Larry, you ran into a truck. You just ran right into a truck. I did? You know, and then one time I said, you ran over a lady that's old enough to be your grandmother. I did. Is she okay? You know, and then I said, you took a jump and you flipped. And he's like, I did? Did I get a lot of air? I was like, yeah, you looked amazing, you know, but you fell and hurt yourself. I just told him a bunch of different stories. And it didn't matter because 3 minutes later, he didn't remember it. And I'd tell him another one. So they did a CAT scan. They cleared him. They released us. We were hungry. We went to the steakhouse, the Sizzler down the road. We're sitting there. We're at Sizzler. We just spent 4 hours at the hospital. We're sitting at Sizzler waiting for our food. He looks at me and he goes, man, my head hurts. I think I must have fallen and hit my head. I said, did you? I said, are you okay? Yeah. I said, do you need to go to the doctor? No, I don't need to go to the doctor. He didn't even remember we were at the hospital for 4 hours. I said, are you sure? Yeah, we're fine. And he said, Dad, this was really fun. Thanks for bringing me skiing. Just out of curiosity, I said, Larry, how many days did we ski? He goes, I think we've been here like 2 or 3 days. I said, well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Because it was as expensive as 2 or 3 days, I can tell you that. All 10 minutes of it. And so we get in the car after eating, and we're driving out of Big Bear, and we're doing those switchbacks coming out down into kind of the San Bernardino area. And as we're just outside of town, I look to the side. Larry's in the passenger seat. And he's normally a real calm and collected, not an emotional individual. But his eyes are filled with tears, and he is almost hyperventilating. He's having like a panic attack. And I pulled the car over very quickly, and I said, Larry, what's wrong? And he said, I can't remember anything. And in that moment, my heart just kind of broke for him. I'm thinking, how disorienting, how displacing would it be to not be able to remember anything? He said, Dad, I don't remember what I did last week. I don't remember how we got here. I don't remember anything about my recent life. I don't remember anything. And he starts to cry. And he's panicked. And I said, Larry, I'm trying to tell him you're going to be okay. Your memory's going to come back. But what if it doesn't? And he's asking me, Dad, what do I do? I can't remember anything. What do I do? What do I do? And in this moment, I'm fishing. I don't know how to help my son, who frankly is like in a psychological free fall. He has lost his ability. He's lost all of his anchor points. He's lost all of his reference points for reality. What is true? Things we take for granted subconsciously all day, okay? He doesn't have those anchor points anymore, and I'm struggling for a way to help him remember. The outcome of the moment was that he kept saying, Dad, Dad, Dad. And so I grabbed his shoulders and I turned him towards me and I said, Larry, look at me. Do you know who I am? He was a little bit irritated by the question. Yeah, you're Dad, Dad. Like, I've got bigger problems. And I said, I know who you are. And you don't right now, but I do. And I've got you. And I'm taking you home. And so this is where the title of the book came from. I said, stop trying to remember. It's not going to get you anywhere. Trying to remember who you are doesn't get you anywhere. I said, put your head back and rest. If you know me, I know who you are. Okay, so now you know where we're going, all right? Kind of gave away the whole punchline. So hold on to that sense, that story, and let's go back to Mark 8, and let's break it down for a few minutes. Jesus is talking about loss of self. Mark 8:34. Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself. Okay. Now we think of this in surface ways. Okay, we think of this in behavioral ways. We think of this in little trite, trivial, like, I'll give you your way instead of my way, okay? But this goes much deeper than that as Jesus continues to unfold. Take up your cross and follow me. Whosoever, now this is a key, we're going to unfold this verse. Whosoever will save his life shall lose it. Now, in the New Testament, there are 3 words, Greek words, that come into our English language as the word life. They all mean different things, okay? I'm going to give them to you real quick. The word bios is your physical, it's your physiology. It's like where we get the word biology, okay? The word zoe is like the life that God gives us, okay? It's God's life in us. And then the word suke is our sense of self. It's where we get the word psyche. It's our inner self, okay? It's in the New Testament referred to as the inner man. Okay, the outward man is perishing, but the inner man is being renewed day by day. It's the renewing of our mind, Romans 12. I'm going to kind of extemporaneously throw a lot of New Testament references in here. I just want you to understand we're going to be grabbing a lot of scriptures as we go because these themes go throughout the New Testament, okay? But the idea that Jesus is driving at, he's not talking about losing your physical life. He's not saying go out and be martyred. That's what it takes to be saved. Like, if you'll go lose your life physically, then that'll save you. Martyrdom is surely an honorable thing if that's God's call. But in this sense, that's not what he's referring to. He's not referring, the word wasn't bios. The word wasn't zoe. The word he used was suke. So what he's saying is, if you will lose your deepest sense of who you think you are, then you will find out who you really are. But if you try to construct and maintain your own sense of who you are, then you will lose your suke, okay? So this idea of suke is the same as our modern idea of identity. And I'm going to define the idea of identity with you, because if you pick up 10 books on our identity in Christ, and they're all fine, they're all good, they're all great, wonderful and helpful books, but there's 8 or 10 out there that basically follow the same roadmap. And what they do is they go through the New Testament, they grab the names of Christians. They grab the synonyms for Christians from the New Testament. I'm adopted. I'm a child of God. I'm sealed. I'm redeemed. I'm justified. And every chapter is who I am, right? I'm declared righteous. I'm sealed. I'm made new. I'm a new creature. And all these wonderful things that are wonderful to understand. And I've studied them, and I've read about them, and I've heard them preached my whole life. My trouble was I could tell you who I am in Christ in terms and in theory and in intellectual presentation. I could unfold it for you. I could teach it to you. But it had never really moved from my head to my heart. Okay? I could tell you who I was, but I had never deeply experienced it. And you'll understand why in a few minutes, okay? So what Jesus is talking about here is what happened in the life of every single God follower in Scripture, okay? You can track it all the way back to Abraham and all the way forward, okay? What I do in the book is I focus on the end of Jesus' ministry, the disciples, the collapse of their dreams and ideas, and the resurrection, and then the realization, the aha, the light bulb moment of Jesus is bigger and better and more unbelievable than we ever thought he was. And this isn't about a kingdom on earth. This isn't about a geopolitical. This isn't about the nation of Israel. This isn't about us ruling in Jerusalem with him temporarily. This is about something much bigger and much better, and we're not at all who we thought we were, and he's not at all who we thought he was. And the dawning of this in their lives, the dawning of this was transformational. Okay, so that's the whole idea of stop trying is we are either trying to build an identity ourselves, or we are trying to become who God says we are, to the point of real discouragement, where often we'll give up. Okay, so let me shift gears and let's define some terms, okay? Let's define the term identity. This is why I say this is where Scripture meets philosophy. Don't be afraid of that, by the way. As long as Scripture is the authority, truth is always true, okay? And Christianity is the truest philosophy of life, okay? So identity is your deepest sense of self. The Bible also uses the word soul to reference this, or heart, or self, or inner man, okay? Here's another way to say it. It's who I understand myself to be. Okay? Some things about identity I want you to know. It's subconscious. So before I began to study this stuff, I never thought about my identity. Like, it just never even occurred to me. It's something that operates as a subtext to our everyday living. It's subconscious. It's more so than conscious. But here's the thing about it. You have an identity, and you're giving it perpetual attention. It's like breathing. You don't know you're breathing right now, but you are. Your heart is beating. You're not making it beat. It's just beating. You are always living out of an identity, and by virtue of that fact, you're always cultivating or constructing or working to maintain or protect that identity. Always. We all are, okay? Who you think you are, who others say you are, who you believe others or God expects you to be. And there's oh goodness, in the book I think I list 15 or 20 different factors that are components of your identity. And we live in a world where this is mainstream. Like, this is every day in the news, every day in the entertainment industry. It's the subtext of every Disney movie. We'll see that in a few minutes. It's the main narrative of our culture, okay? The whole expressive individuality narrative. Determine your own gender, self-identify. All of this is identity narrative, okay? And it goes way back into several hundred years of philosophy, which we won't really have time to unpack a lot of that. But you have an identity. It is subconscious. It's always working at the core. This is keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Like every issue of your life is lived out of and flows out of this core. This is your core being. It's psychological, which means it is, that's suke, the word. There's a spiritual component to it. There's an emotional component to it. There's an intellectual, rational component to it. And there's a volitional or a will component to it. Your heart is your mind, your will, and your emotions, okay? Which is, the sum total of your psyche or your psychology, okay? You are always cultivating, always constructing, always maintaining, or securing your identity. Our greatest fear, our deepest loss and depression usually happens when events in life do to us psychologically what the ski trip did to Larry physically. Okay? Like Larry had a collision that jolted his sense and understanding of who he is. Life has ways of undoing the subconscious parts of our lives where we have defined ourselves. Okay? So, the world is constantly telling you how to form your identity and how to tie off your psyche to stable things. Okay? To these factors. And it could be your ethnicity. It could be your gender. It could be your education. It could be your abilities or your achievements. It's usually achievements. It could be your economic security. It could be your relational world. Who likes you? Who loves you? Who affirms you? Where do you fit? Where do you belong? All of these, by the way, none of them are inherently sinful. It's not sinful to value your ethnicity. God's not colorblind. He's creative. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with valuing your ethnicity. There's something wrong with idolizing your ethnicity. See, we take good blessings, good gifts of God, my abilities, my achievements, my accomplishments, my family, my marriage, my romance, my this or that. We take these good gifts and we subconsciously become defined by them. And the problem, the inherent problem is we can lose these things. Okay? So whatever you tie yourself to psychologically for a sense of meaning, for a sense of significance, sense of value, a sense of love and acceptance, whatever you tie your heart to, if it's losable, if it's changeable, if it's fragile, then you are just one heartbeat, one rejection, one slight, one racial slur away from the loss of your identity. Okay? And from a disorientation of, wait, who am I now? Okay? So what happened to get me asking these questions was, first of all, a cancer diagnosis. So 22 years of joyful marriage and ministry and growing up a family in a healthy church, and suddenly I'm laying on my back in bed, and I kind of subconsciously, not even knowing I was doing it. If you asked me at 38 or 39, I have friends in here that knew me at that time of my life. I have a lot of regrets of that era of life, but I would have genuinely said, I'm serving the Lord, I'm trying my best. What I didn't know is subconsciously, I was kind of anchored, there were anchor points of my identity in that. And it happens to all of us, okay? Suddenly, everything changes. And now I'm the cancer guy, which nobody wants to be the cancer guy. And everybody that sees me, used to be, people would see me, hey, how you doing? I was a happy person. Then they see me, they're like, how are you? And I'm like, I was happy until I saw you, but now I'm depressed. everybody suddenly changed around me, you know. And I was like, I don't want this. I don't want this. This isn't me. I help people with cancer. I don't do cancer. This is not who I am. And God said, no, this is my assignment for you. It's not who you are, but it's my assignment for you. Wow. It's an assignment. Doesn't define me, but it is an opportunity. It's a stewardship. But all of a sudden I'm in bed. My first question was, is God mad at me? That's bad theology. See, God got mad at Jesus in your place. Like, if Jesus paid it all, then how do you reconcile that? So I got more to pay, so cancer is the way to, like God's sitting up in heaven going, okay, give him cancer right there. See, he just crossed the line, give him cancer. That's too much. Jesus paid for most of it, but now he needs cancer. That's how we think. I said, God, is this punishment? No, Jesus took your punishment. Is this chastening? Sure, every painful thing in life is chastening. That word means nurture. I'm cultivating growth in your life. Of course it's chastening. Don't marry punishment and chastening. They're not the same. Okay, that's another conversation. But the second question after, like, God, are you upset at me? The second question that comes to my mind is just, who am I now? I can't lead singing in service. I can't be Mr. Youth Pastor. I can't be a good husband or father. I'm in bed throwing up and so drugged up. I'm sleeping 12 hours. I'm gaining weight because of all the steroids. I look like Uncle Fester. My hair was falling out, dark circles under my eyes. When you see a picture of me at that era, I truly looked like Uncle Fester. Some people are trying to make me feel good and say Bruce Willis. It was nowhere near Bruce Willis. It was Uncle Fester, okay? And we laughed a lot about cancer, and we journeyed through it humorously, but I was having a deep displacement. God, who am I now? There was like phase 2 after cancer. I'm trying to re-engage my life, and God's going, no, your call is to follow me, lose it all, walk away. People don't understand this. Leaving California for Connecticut was much, much more difficult than cancer. Cancer I didn't have a choice in. Cancer I didn't have to walk away from my home and my friends and everybody that I knew and the life that I knew. Connecticut, I was choosing to walk away, and it was like this. It was truly a Mark 8, just walk away, follow me. And it was a terrible death experience. And then I got to Connecticut, and for about a year, the church was just a depressed state. And I would get up in the morning, and I knew I needed to go to work, but I didn't want to go to the church because it was depressing. The one secretary that was there really didn't like me. The building needed $1 million worth of work, and I didn't have any money to do any work on it, so I just went to Dunkin' Donuts every morning. Not because the donuts are good, they're terrible, but the coffee is really good. The people were cheerful. The lights were bright. There was TV on. The walls were painted cheerfully, and I would sit there, and for the first 2 hours, I told the staff, while Taylor Swift was playing on the radio, stream, I was just sitting there moping, complaining to God, while winter was descending on Connecticut. Slushy, cold, icy, lonely mornings. And I would complain to God for an hour. God, who am I? Where am I? Why am I here? What happened? I don't know these people. I don't want to be here. It was terrible. But those conversations with God just kept saying to my heart, I know who you are. I'm breaking down who you thought you were. I'm taking away all the fragile places you had anchored yourself. And I'm going to show you who I am and how I know you. Okay? So this identity, deepest sense of self, subconscious, perpetual attention, we're maintaining it. We're tying off our hearts in ways we don't know to things that we can lose. Okay? So part of my identity, I'm Dana's husband. You tell me, is that permanent or is it breakable and losable and fragile? I know what you think you should answer. You're going, that's a trick question. The covenant is lifetime. I get that. But can it change? Absolutely it can. Some of you have experienced that on one level or another. One of us can abandon the other. One of us can be unfaithful. One of us can die. So if my highest identity is I'm Dana's husband, if I lose Dana, I lose myself. I lose who I know myself to be. And I will be asking the question, who am I now? Who am I really? Okay? So this is your identity. And life has a way of bringing us to these moments of loss that are who am I now questions. All right. Now, I want to turn a corner. We'll take a break at about 6:05. There are only 3 ways to form an identity. Most of us in this room are ping-ponging between 2. Okay? The whole purpose of tonight is to introduce the third. All right? And to send you on a journey of growing in that third. Okay? But to understand the third, we have to unfold. And every young person, I'm so glad there's a lot of young people in the room, because you will more naturally grasp this than somebody in their 50s or 60s or 70s in the room. I think, although it's applicable to everybody, I think the young people almost speak this language, okay? So the first way the world has taught us for thousands of years to formulate identity is what I'm going to call, or what philosophy calls, a traditional identity, okay? And I'm going to give each of these a simple definition that you have got to unfold in your own life. I'm going to open a door to a room in your mind that you may have never stepped into, okay? But this room has a lot of things for you to explore. A traditional identity is others define me, okay? I'm defined by others. A traditional identity is looking outside of myself for definition and for significance. I explain in the book that your identity, I should have said this earlier, is where you look for acceptance, security, and significance. You might want to write those 3 words down. Acceptance, security, and significance. Acceptance, who loves me? Security, what most anchors me when life shakes? Significance, why am I here? What is my purpose? What value do I have? Okay? Now, when I say a traditional identity looks outward, and the simple definition is others define me, here's how this unfolds. We all came into life with other people telling us who we are. I am the son of Lance and Joe Schmidt. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1969. I'm the grandson of Edwin and Kathleen Bird and Charles and Ann Schmidt. That's who I am at birth. And my life formed from there. And every year, new components of that identity were realized. I'm a first grader. I'm a 5th grader. I'm a brother. I'm the brother of Matt and Mark. I'm a boyfriend. I'm a soccer player. I'm a college student. I'm a fiance. I'm a husband, okay? Life just goes. And when you're sitting in class, you're an A student, you're a C student, you're a D student, you're a failing student. But by whose definition? Like, who says? Someone else says. Your teacher says. The school system says. I'm a first-string basketball player. I'm a second-string I'm a bench warmer. By whose standard? The coaches. I'm a good son. I'm a rebellious son. By whose standard? My parents. I'm a faithful church member. I'm a giver. I'm a servant. I'm a team leader. I'm a growth group teacher, whatever. By whose definition? The pastor, the church leaders. So traditional identity is, there's a million systems, man-made systems. Your job, your education. What do we, when we introduce ourselves to one another, what's one of the first questions we ask? What do you do? A traditional identity is fundamentally defined by what you do. Now, this ought to start getting you thinking in terms of gospel, because in your relationship with Jesus, you are not fundamentally defined by what you do. You're fundamentally defined by what he has done. Okay? So this is the way the world works, traditional identity, but this is not the way God works. It's the way every man-made system has to work, okay? And you want to write some descriptors down. There's good and bad woven into this. It's not wholly wicked. It's not wholly good. You're going to see in a minute, it's insufficient, okay? It's how the world needs to work, but it does not meet the core needs of your heart, and it never will, okay? And the world is waking up to this and kind of demonizes the traditional identity. So it is others-oriented, which means it's who I ought to be, it's who I should be, emphasis on ought or should, it's who I have to be, it's who others expect me to be. Now, this is honorable in the sense that it's others-focused. And it's honorable in the sense that it calls me to live sacrificially for others. Okay? So those service members in Afghanistan serving their country right now are finding identity in I'm a Marine. I'm a patriot. I'm serving. I'm sacrificing for my country. So the traditional identity teaches us to do what is most honorable and most valuable for others. So that's the good part of it, okay? That's the strength of it. It honors community. It honors family. It honors sacrifice for others. So in that sense, we grow up being commissioned by our parents and pastors and teachers and leaders and coaches to strive, to improve, and to grow and to be better, which is good, okay? To steward our lives, to live honorably, to bless and serve others. It's others-focused. It's living up to others' systems. How is it weak or insufficient? How does this bite us? Okay, well, probably one of the biggest words is that it's conditional. It's conditional because if you succeed, traditional identity works only if you're good. If you're bad, you're out. Like you're rejected. You're a failure. You're out of the club. You don't fit. If you don't follow the pattern, if you don't fit in the box that your community has shaped for you, your family, your church, your school, others, if you don't fit in that box, if you don't look like they expect you to look, if you break out of that box in any way, you're out, okay? So it's conditional. On your best behavior, good job, we love you, we like you, you're in. Gold stars, straight A's, you get the job, you start, you're the starting player, you're in. You got the bonus, you got the promotion. But if you fail, you're going to lose your identity. You're going to lose the affirmation that those structures gave you. Okay? So it's conditional. Secondly, and this kind of tags with this, it's performance-based. It's based on your ability to perform up to the standard. It's performance-based. So it's driven by what you do. How good are you performing? Now, the reason I say I'm just kicking you down on a journey is that you've got to unpack this in your life and let the Spirit of God show you how this creeps in subconsciously, even into a church context. Okay? We become defined by what we do and how we fit, our performance. We reduce the glory and the holiness of God to a list of about 8 or 10 things that we can do. And we think we're good. We pat ourselves on the back because I listen to this music, I read this Bible, I cut my hair this way, I wear this to church, I go this many times a week, I'm this, and this. God is lucky to have me. And what we end up doing, even in a church context, is subconsciously relating to God and one another through this lens of traditional identity. So the people that are the most active, the most faithful, the most giving, the highest performers in the church are the most affirmed, the most loved, the most accepted. And the low performers generally don't last. And if you get saved in a traditional identity church, you better, you got a 3-month window. Within about 3 months, you better get the haircut, you better change your dress, you better stop listening to your junk music, you better quit every bad habit, and you better get the right Bible, the right behaviors. If you got about 3 months, and if you don't comply within about 3 months, you're going to start getting that cold. And what ends up happening, I'm going to get off track if I'm not careful. What ends up happening is we witness to somebody of the unconditional love of Jesus. And then they get saved. And we bring them into a body rife with conditional love. It's like, aren't you glad you were born into grace? Now get to work. And we bring them out of the bondage of sin into the bondage of performance-based acceptance. And it's incoherent. Because in their mind, they're going, wait a minute, I thought you told me in the gospel that Jesus accepts me unconditionally, but now you're telling me I've got to cross all these, I've got to pass this test to fit here? And it's incoherent. I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but conditional, performance-based. Here's the other thing about traditional identity. It's losable, it's fragile, it's vulnerable. Push this through the grid of abuse. What does a victim become in this system? In a traditional identity structure where you have been abused your whole life, or you've been the victim of sexual abuse, what are you? Who are you? You're a victim. The abuse defines you because what somebody else did to you defines you. The wound, you're defined by your wounds. In a traditional identity, you're defined by your success, you're defined by your performance, you're defined by your failure or by your wounds. And in these systems, if you have a good life, traditional identity works for the high achievers. The high grades, the high performers, the really moral people, the ones that can have their devotions the most. For struggling people like me that miss days on their devotions and some days forget to pray and wake up selfish and argue with their wives, and for struggling people like me, traditional identity just reminds us over and over that we are losers. There's some sense of me being here. I told Ryan, I try to speak transparently because I have this goal that if I can help you see what a loser I really am, then you'll be like, well, I'm not nearly that bad. And there's hope for you then, right? And that's kind of what we do with Scripture. Like Peter was so bad he just denied Jesus altogether. So if there's hope for Peter, if there's hope for Zacchaeus, if there's hope for Matthew, if there's hope, oh goodness, there's hope. If there's hope for Paul, there's hope for me. Okay. So this is losable and fragile. If I'm performing well, I've got a strong identity. If I stop performing, I lose it. I have a weak identity. If I have been well loved my whole life by others, I have a strong identity. If I've been abandoned, neglected, abused, or hurt, I have a weak identity. So it's a trap. Okay? It's a trap. And the failed and the abused and the hurt generally really run from churches that push the gospel through a traditional identity structure because they can't perform up to that metric that fast. Okay? And they can't resonate with, they can't identify with your feelings of success and affirmation because you've been so loved your whole life and you've been so successful your whole life and things have just worked out for you. But there's a whole lot of people whose lives have been burdened and broken and buffeted them their whole life. and they struggle with a weak identity, okay? So traditional identity is others define me. Let me give you this one, and then we'll take a quick break. Let me say a couple more things about this, and then we'll take a break. The deepest problem with this identity structure is that it completely steamrolls over your individuality. This is why the world is today, and the younger generation is growing up, despising these structures, because these structures say, we don't care what you want to do. We don't care what your dreams are. Go to this college, do this, become this. And it's deceptive, but there is in all of our hearts this strand of this sense of injustice in that consideration. Wait a minute. I get living for others, sacrificially serving, honor, all that. But what about who I am? Can I be me? Okay, and traditional identity says, no, you don't get to be you. You get to be who everybody tells you you have to be. One of the best illustrations is the movie It's a Wonderful Life. George, what's his name? Bailey. George Bailey. His dad runs the bank and whatever mortgage company, the loan company. He wants to get out of town and go do great things. He's got big plans. But he's saddled with the family business, and the family expects him to be responsible and stay and sacrifice himself for the family business. So the whole movie is an identity narrative. Does George get to go be who he wants to be? Or does he have to be who everybody tells him he has to be? And the whole idea is he's struggling with a loss at one point in the movie of, my life has made no difference whatsoever. I didn't get to be who I wanted to be. And the traditional identity narrative is all woven into it. So it destroys individuality. Traditional identity doesn't care who you want to be. Okay. The outcomes of a traditional identity are inevitably one of two poles. If you're successful, you unavoidably become proud of your success. You're either proud that you achieved it, or you're proud that you were so good that God gave it to you. Okay? However you phrase it, like, look what I did, I'm self-made, that's the secular version. Or, look how good I was and all that, boy, God's been good to me. That's kind of code language sometimes for, look how good I was. You must not have been as good as me because he didn't bless you like he blessed me, right? I was having lunch with a guy one time, and I was telling him about the cancer battle. He was asking me questions, and he said something. He didn't realize how he was insulting me when he said it. But he said, I just hope God will teach me those. I hope he won't have to give me cancer to teach me something like that. I'm like, oh, I see what you say, what you think. You think I'm so stupid that I couldn't learn it any other way, that he just decided to afflict me, which is not how God works, okay? That's beside the point. But you'll either get full of pride on one hand and then judgmentalism. You're not as good as me because look, you're not as blessed as me. That's exactly how the Pharisees thought. Or you will become despairing that you can't live up to, and you'll get into a give up mindset. You will, if on the success end, you'll get exhausted of trying to keep everybody happy. On the failure end, you'll get so despairing that you run away from these systems. You liberate yourself from them. Exactly what the prodigal son did, which maybe we'll come back to that story in a minute. So, traditional identity, others define me. Before we take a break, I'm going to take 3 minutes. Does anybody have a question? I just want to make sure I'm making sense. Okay. Whether we know it or not, this is how the world around us works, whether we've all ever thought about it. Remember, it's not evil. These systems are not inherently evil. They're just insufficient. They're conditional. They're losable. They're breakable. We can fail them. So they don't really deeply define us. And if we let them define us, we're going to come into a collapse. We're going to come into loss. So in the next session, we'll unfold the next two identities. You want to take a break? You want to say anything, or just 5 minutes? 5 minutes. So load up on coffee, use the restroom. We'll regroup in 5 minutes. No. I got.
Jesus, there's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you, Lord. We adore you. There is no sinner beyond the infinite stretch of your mercy. How can we thank you enough for how you have loved us completely? Jesus, there's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. All we have, all we need, all we want is you. All we have, all we need, all we want is you. All we have, all we Jesus, there's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you. There's no one like you. Jesus, we love you, ever adore you, Lord.
Test 1, 2. All right, let's find our way back to our seats. I can't wait for you and myself as well to hear and learn this second half of these biblical concepts and truths. I was telling Jordana, whose husband, she and her husband pastor at Bethel Baptist over in Santa Ana, about 10, 15 minutes from us. Number one, Cary, I told her they have to come to Orlando in 2023. But I've heard Cary, he's taught my wife and I this with a small group of pastors the last 2 years. And this is the third time I'm hearing most of this, and still just hearing it again is such, and what you're going to hear this second half, such great reminders that will inform, if you'll let it, will inform and impact literally your entire relationship with Christ every single day. And so I'm excited for you to hear the final session here. When we're done with this session, we'll have the men bring around and get a copy of that book that he wrote to each family unit that's here. And thank you again for being here. Just in case I forget while folks are finding their seats, for the Liberty family, this week, no midweek service. If you'd like to come out Tuesday night, we've got our back to school night. And you pray for our teachers, Mr. Cypri, and all of our staff, welcoming our largest enrollment. Looks like about 425. So we've got about 150 new students joining us that have not been a part of Newport. Pray that we'll have wisdom as we minister to them And every one of them has different family situations. That there are many in this room right now that because you put your children in our school, that you found out about our church, and God has used this ministry to impact you. And so we're praying God will do that again. And so you pray for that. So no midweek service this week. Back to school night on Tuesday night. If you have kids in the secondary, that's at 6. And then all of us, secondary and elementary, at 7 on Tuesday evening. And we're looking forward to that. All right. I think we've got most of us back to our seats. Pastor Cary.
Okay, so we've uncovered what is identity. We know that Jesus tells us that in order to find who we are, at our deepest core, we have to lose who we think we are, or who others say we are, or who we want to be or try to be. Traditional identity always looks at the externals, looks at performance, and affirms and secures and gives you significance and value based on how you perform up to others' standards, okay? Just remember this, okay, and especially the young people. Traditional identity takes good things and makes them ultimate things. All right? So it's good to live a life of service to others. It's a godly, it's a Christ-like thing to live honorably, okay? But that living honorably shouldn't define you. And it shouldn't define others to you, okay? If the first thing you notice about somebody is what they wear to church, welcome to traditional identity. You're thinking through the grid. It's so deeply woven into you. The first thing you notice is, wow, that person isn't dressed like us. That person doesn't look like us. Okay? So that is a traditional identity world. And we said it steamrolls over your individuality, your dreams, your desires. Okay? So the world comes along over the last several hundred years, through the Renaissance and Enlightenment and the pre-modern and modern, and now we're in this postmodern era. And the philosophy of our world came along and said, you are unique, and nobody should have the authority or the power to tell you who you are. No other human being should have that kind of authority in your life. And nobody should define systems that crush or squash or inhibit your individuality. Okay? And the modern philosophy comes along and says, don't allow anybody to define you. Don't allow anybody to tell you who you are. Now, this is enticing, especially to young people. Why? Because we live in a weird world. With the social media world has changed the whole psychology of identity. And it's all visual, it's all contrived, it's all projected. And it's all malleable, it's all fluid. You are who you say you are whoever you feel like being. You are whoever you want to be in the moment, and all you have to do to change who you are is change your social media profile. You can try on new identities like you try on clothes. You can literally like transform your whole sense of self. What is this? Where did it come from? Well, at its core, psychologically, it's the secular response to the insufficiency and supposed oppression of a world that for thousands of years has said, you are who we say you are. And it resonates with us because in so many forms on the planet, okay, let's just reach back several thousand years to ancient world where women were oppressed and objectified and treated as not even second-class citizens. And then Jesus comes along and there's women in his entourage that are valuable to him. The first missionary he sent to Samaria was a woman who was deeply flawed and failed. And suddenly Jesus values women. The first observers of the resurrection and the witnesses to his resurrection were women. I mean, all of a sudden, the narrative of Jesus completely shifts against the cultural narrative. And if you were a woman in that era, the traditional identity says, you're nothing. You have no value. But clearly that strikes against even what we know to be true in our hearts and lives, and it's woven into us. And so there's a part of the human psyche that wants to rise up against that and say, no, that's unjust. You can't hold me hostage to that kind of structure. And that narrative plays out in all of our lives on some level at some point when the traditional identity fails us, okay? So the world is only too happy to come along and say, well, here's a better way. And we're going to call this a modern identity, okay? And a modern identity simply says, I define me. I define me. No one has the power to define me but me. Now help me out. Do I have intrinsic God-given individuality? Yes or no? Yes, you do. Okay, we all do. Should any human being or group of human beings have unfettered authority to tell me who I am? Yes or no? No. That's why we call Jesus Lord. Because frankly, whatever defines you is your Lord. Wherever you look for that ultimate validating source of value and security and significance, that's your Lord. That's your supreme thing. That's your ultimate thing. So yeah, there's strands of truth in this that like no human being should have that kind of leverage of authority. That can become oppressive and bondage. And there is individuality in you that God's given to you. So the modern identity comes along and says, well, there is no God, so that doesn't matter. And you're just randomly evolved biological matter, so there really is no true significance to you. There's no true value to you. And so it's all a construct. There really is no man and woman. That's a man-made construct. There really is no gender. That's a psychological construct that traditional world has imposed on us. Let's break down the binaries. You've heard all this conversation. You've heard this stuff in the political season. By the way, I just want to throw this in. You'll know you've elevated lesser factors to an identity when somebody can't disagree with you without you attacking them. When you have to attack somebody for disagreeing with you, let me tell you what that's a signal of. That whatever they disagree with you on is not just your tradition or your preference or your opinion, it's your identity. And they haven't just expressed that they disagree and they see it differently, they've actually attacked you. I love to talk about the Bible version issue with people. But there are people you just can't talk about that with. Like they get so heated, so angry, and they get to this point where they're ready to just clock you. And then I'm like, at that point I want to go, wow, I think you might want to read the fruit of the Spirit in your version. Like I wish that your Bible was producing its qualities in you. Some people you can't talk to about politics. Why? Because it's more than their preference. It's more than just their temporal. You know, I grew up singing this song, "This world is not my home." What happened to Christians that believe that? Like, oh, yes, it is. And the next president's going to save us. Jesus kind of did, but not all the way. The next president's going to save. I mean, it's all, their identity is so rooted in politics, you can't have a rational conversation with them without the heated, vehement, why? Because you're attacking their identity. So these are deeply woven things. Well, the modern identity comes along and says, hey, reject that all. Liberate yourself, set yourself free, and you go out there and define yourself. Now, where does this show up? Let me give you a couple examples. I took Haley, we do these dad and daughter dates. She's married now, so we'll probably do less of them. But a few years back, I wanted to take her, so I'm about 30 minutes from Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. They have a free art museum. It's open 5 or 6 days a week. And Yale's campus is real pretty. They got a great bookstore, and they got nice restaurants and coffee shops and stuff. So I said, hey, Haley, let's go down to the art museum. I've never been to an art museum. I'm not an art guy, so I just walked around like an idiot, you know. Art museum, Goodwill, I don't know. I'm just walking around, you know. And so, but Haley's kind of intellectual, and she gets into that kind of stuff. She's studied literature. She's got a writing degree from Liberty, and she's just kind of she's heady. And so we go to this art museum, and we start on the ground floor, which is ancient stuff, and then you work your way up. The cool floor was about the 4th or 5th floor, which is the early American art, and Trumbull paintings that are in all of our history books and all of our textbooks in school. Those actual paintings are on the walls at that museum. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, I've seen these a million times. And here's the real paintings from the Revolutionary era. And then the top floor was modern art. So we're coming up the stairs, and I said, Haley, buckle up. It's about to get weird. So we rounded the corner. We come up to the top floor. I notice there's a security guard off to the side. And I look in the corner, and I see hanging from the ceiling a snow shovel. Wooden handle, metal shovel for snow, hanging from a fishing line. And I looked at that, and I was about to go over and tell this guard, somebody needs to call maintenance and tell them to get that thing down before it falls and hurts somebody, and take it back to the shop so they can shovel snow when it's ready. And I'm looking at that, and I looked over at him, and he walked over to us. He saw the whimsical look on my face. And I was kind of jokingly, like, somebody left a snow shovel hanging there. He goes, that is a work of art. And I laughed, like you did. And he goes, no, seriously. I said, come on. He said, I work up here 8 hours a day. I've stood here hour after hour. I could give you every lecture of every art teacher and every class that comes through. I could tell you every artist and the value of every one of these works of art. And he said that was created by Marcel Duchamp in 1913 or 1912 or something. He was a French artist. He and a group of buddies, young men, college-age kind of guys, in France, were trying to become artists. And they resented the man-made systems that defined and judged and evaluated art by traditional metrics. Maybe they couldn't live up to them. And so Marcel created a kind of artwork that he called ready-mades, in which he just went to the early 1900 version of Walmart and bought a snow shovel and hung it up and said, that's art. What was he doing? Now, there's thick philosophy behind what he's doing. Now, on the surface, we'd say he's stupid. Like, that's not art. A little one layer deeper than that, we would say he's defiant. He is, he's foolish. But at his heart, what he's saying is, I revoke the art world's authority to define what art is. I'm the artist, and art is what the artist says it is. So I'm going to buy a shovel, and I'm going to call it art, and it is art because I'm the authority over my art, and I say it's art. And that security guard told me that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That stupid snow shovel. I'm like, no, I can get one for 20 bucks. Duchamp did a bunch of things like this. He took a toilet and laid it on its side. It's just weird. You can look him up. But it's the early iteration of this idea of reject the traditional definitions, and you define you, and you do you, and you be you. And this has come forward to where it is mainstream. Okay, it is mainstream in our narratives, and I'm gonna have a little fun in showing you how. Okay, Danny Thomas, where are you? Hey, can you come play piano for us for a minute? Okay, you can help me with this big time. And I just realized, man. So Danny and I, we have done a lot of ministry together over the years, and this will just be fun. So, Brother Thomas, let me tell you what to play here. Let's just surprise him. Okay. Let me pull up my lyrics. Let me go here. Can you hear me? Okay. If you know this song, sing it with me. How does it start? Here's what I know. I'm going to try to get your key. Kingdom of isolation. Kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. Couldn't keep it in. Heaven knows I tried. Okay, heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in. Don't let them see. Be the good girl. That's the wrong key, but be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal. Don't feel. Don't let them know. Well, now they know. Now, track with me for a second. What is she singing about? She's singing about traditional identity. She's saying, here's who I really am, but I can't be that. I've got to hide it. I've got to conceal it, not feel it. I can't let them know. Well, now they know. And what does she do? Let it go. I'm trying to catch it. What they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me. Anyway, listen to the words. Hang on, Danny. We'll go to another song. Can't hold it back anymore. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. Okay. You remember, okay. Okay. All fun. I love the song. It's a fun movie, unless you've seen it a million times, and every dad in the room has, probably. Let it go, can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, turn away and slam the door. Let it go. What is she doing? She's moving from the traditional. She's got this great gift. She can make Slurpees. Talk about an individuality. Okay, but her individuality is rendered dangerous. So it's stuff it, bottle it up. You can't be you. Hide away in this palace forever. And you are destined to be the queen of Arendelle. That's who you have to be. You can't be you. You have to be this. And what she ends up doing is running and liberating herself and saying, I don't care. I don't care what they're going to say. She's moving from traditional to modern. Okay? All right. Let me see if we can get our key together on this one. I've been staring at the edge of the water long as I can remember. Just sing it with me. Never really knowing why. I wish I could be the perfect daughter, but I come back to the water. Okay. Every turn I take, every trail I track, every path I make, every road leads back to the place I know where I cannot go, but I long to be. See the line where the sky meets the sea and it calls me. And no one knows how far it goes. With the wind in my sail and the sea stays behind me. One day I'll know. If I just go, there's just no telling how far I'll go. Okay, hold up. So, it's the same story. Hang on. Different characters, different tune. I know everybody on this island seems so happy on this island. Everything is by design. I know everybody on this island has a role on this island. Maybe I can roll with mine. I can lead with pride. I can make us strong. I'll be satisfied if I play along. But the voice inside, do you see the conflict? The community conflicts with the individuality. Now, we're coming back to Scripture. Hang on. This is all the world around us, okay? I'll be satisfied if I play along. but the voice inside sings a different song. What is wrong with me? See, this is the narrative that's being woven into the psyche of our 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. And it's not entirely wicked, it's just deceptive. And you'll see how it's not entirely wicked, but it's tremendously deceptive. All right, here's another one. I want to be where the people are. Up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun, wandering free. Wish I could be part of that world. What would I give if I could live out of these waters? What would I pay to spend a day warm on the sand? Bet you on land they understand. Bet they don't reprimand their daughters. Bright young women, sick of swimming, ready to stand. It's always the girls they're going after. It's always the girls. And so here's like, is this totally wicked? Bright young women? They are bright young women. Like there's truth woven with deception here. Ready to know what the people know, asking my questions. When's it my turn? Wouldn't I love to explore the shore up above, out of the sea? Wish I could be part of that world. One more. We could do this all day. It's just everywhere. And I hope that I'm giving you eyes to see this everywhere. This is great fodder to carry on gospel and theological conversations with your kids. Because we're watching these movies with our families, but we're not helping our kids sift between these narratives and unpack them through a biblical lens. And they can't fall prey to this, all right? Last one. I'm going to cut into the middle again, Danny. I want much more than this provincial life. I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. I want it more than I can tell. And for at once it might be grand to have someone understand. I want so much more than they've got planned. Traditional identity. They've got planned. Okay. I want adventure in the great. So Belle is torn. The characters all. Why do we like these movies? We like them not just because they're fun. We like the songs. We resonate with the struggle. That's why we like these movies. Even as adults, that's why we like these movies. Let me give you a couple of grown-up versions of this. Greatest Showman. We can live in a world that we design. I'm trying to remember the lyrics. Million dreams are keeping me awake. Remember that? That's a fun song. I mean, Road Trip with Haley, put on Greatest Showman. You know, first time I heard the song, she was getting ready in her bathroom. She's playing the song, and I said, turn that off. She's like, why? It's just a good musical. I said, no, that's false teaching. That's philosophy. That's pagan philosophy. You can't design your own world. That's pagan, you know. So I sat down and watched the movie with her. You know, there's this place in the movie where Barna is helping all these outcasts have a new value, new identity at this circus. And they sing this song, This Is Me. And in one moment you're like, yeah, this is you. Yeah. Those people have a new sense of value. But taken to its extreme, you've got the gender narrative going, this is me. I'm not a man, I'm a woman. And I can be that if I want to be. So it's this mixed bag, okay? I'm done, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Okay, let me pull back up my main outline. So modern identity says go out and define yourself. Self-identify. Now let's talk about what the promise or the strand, the bait. Let's talk about the bait on top of the hook. Why is this attractive? It's attractive because it seems or it promises to honor our individuality. The individuality that traditional identity trampled, modern comes along and says you can have it back. Go be you. set yourself free. Okay? It tells you to pursue your dreams and desires. But here's the flaw. Here's the hook under the bait. It sends you into an ocean of options and tells you to figure it out for yourself. In the first position, it seems so attractive and hopeful, but now here you are, lost in an ocean of millions of identity options. Who do you want to be? Life is short. You better get busy. To me, this is like there's one version. Here's the kind of the assumption. There's one true you out there. It's like if you took a cruise from New York to London, and halfway across the Atlantic, you took a quarter and chucked it out into the ocean. And then when you got to London, you grab an 18-year-old and said, that quarter is the secret to your entire life fulfillment and happiness. Go find it. What are the chances in this lifetime that kid's going to find that quarter? That's what the modern identity says. Try, try, try until you find the you that's truly you. It's telling Larry with his concussion, when he's falling to pieces psychologically, get out of the car, go out into the world, son, and go remember who you are. Go figure it out. Go find yourself. And what it is, it starts you as a young person on this journey of perpetual experimentation with your one life. And that experimentation leads you to perpetual recreation. You're trying on and off new versions of yourself. You're trying this major and that major at college, and this boy and this girl and that. Maybe I'm not heterosexual. Maybe I'm bisexual. Maybe I'm homosexual. And maybe I'm transsexual. I don't even know all the terms. And they're not just starting this with 15-year-olds. They're starting this with 7-year-olds. And you got now first grade teachers asking kids, are you a him or a her or a they? That, my friends, is abusive. It is psychologically abusive. Okay? Because that 7th grader does, or 7-year-old does have definition. That 7th grader, it's foolish to say, whatever you want to be. Before their sexuality has even awakened, before their desires have even awakened, they're telling kids, maybe you're bi, maybe you're trans, maybe you're... That's ludicrous, okay? That gender is fluid and that you're defined. Here's what that narrative says. You're defined by your desires. You're defined by your lusts. Your desires define you. Deify your desires and chase your desires. So whatever you feel, that's what you are. See, traditional identity says whatever you do, that's what you are. Modern identity says no, it's whatever you feel, that's what you are. Hey, the problem is our feelings are really fickle. Do you ever remember in high school how many people you had a crush on? Let me tell you how my feelings are fickle. I want to be healthy. I want to exercise and work out and keep myself really healthy. But I also want to eat pizza and In-N-Out Burger and donuts. I have conflicting desires. Truly. Our desires are fluid. Our emotions are fluid. If your identity is based in the modern narrative, you have a very fluid identity. You have a very subjective identity, okay? It's always in motion, which makes you exceedingly fragile. But here's the thing about this identity. It's still performance-based. Okay, traditional identity, you're performing for everybody else. Modern identity, you're performing for yourself. Okay? You're either working hard for others or we're working hard for you. It is intense, immense pressure. Find it soon. Fulfill, be fulfilled. Find your fulfillment in being your true self. Get out there, figure out who you are. Go into your heart and figure out who you are, and then liberate yourself and announce to the world what you are, who you are. Here's the other thing about this identity. It is really deceptive in that, here's how it works. I'm going to break away from my parents and my people and my community and all the things they say that I should or have to be. And I'm going to go into my heart and I'm going to let it go. I'm going to decide what or who I am. But inevitably, I have to come back to people and announce. I have to come out with my new self. And I have to tell them who I am or what I am so that they will affirm it. Now think about it. What just happened? It became a traditional identity. It's still looking for external validation. Okay? So I'm going to use this silly illustration. I go into my heart. I don't like being a person, human being. I'm a tree. So now I know I'm not a tree, but I'm going to be a tree. I'm going to self-identify as a tree. So I got to come out and tell you that I'm a tree. My mission is to feel tree-ish. Because I'm convinced that being a tree is going to make me feel tree-ish. I thought this was a really obscure illustration until my assistant a couple weeks ago sent me an article about a woman who actually is self-identifying as a tree. No kidding, it's a true story. Somebody's really doing this. So I come out, I'm a tree. And I act like a tree and glue bark to myself and staple leaves to myself. And I'm like, I'm a tree. And I'm requiring you. And we live in this crazy world that here's what the world says. You must respect the self-identity of whatever somebody says. You have the right to tell me I'm not a tree. Okay? So you have to tell me I'm a tree. All right? So I'm a tree, and you all say? Okay, but here's the problem with this. It is such a stupid game. Professing to themselves wise, they became fools. Okay? Because here's what I know is happening. I know I'm not a tree, so I'm lying to myself. You know I'm not a tree, so you're lying to me. I know that you know I'm not a tree, so I know you're lying to me. So how is this going to make me happy? When I know I'm not a tree. No, it actually just makes me angry. Because declaring myself to be a tree doesn't fulfill me, and you telling me I'm a tree doesn't fulfill me. So now I'm just getting angry. Which is why we have a world that the more modern and self-liberating it becomes, the angrier it becomes. To the point that we're going to burn the system down. We're going to burn the buildings. We're going to tear up the country. We're going to destroy everything. And the only place it can go is anarchy. But this is a total dead-end road of despair and rage. Okay? So on the good side, it's like go be you, which sounds promising. But the dark side is huge. All right. Here's what I want you to see about both of these, then I got to unpack the last. They're both save yourself propositions. You're either working hard for you or working hard for someone else. They are both, and I want you to see this, they're horizontal. I'm looking to others for affirmation and security and acceptance and value, or I'm looking to me to create it from within myself. They're horizontal. They're both about trying and failing. They're both about living for an identity rather than from an identity. They're both fragile and fluid. They change. The traditional can change when I lose it or fail it. The modern changes when I don't feel it. And it's a false dichotomy. And here's the world where the world has pinned us. The world has created a tension between who I have to be and who I want to be. So my world, my community, my family and community where God placed me needs me to be this. But I want to be this. And so there's a conflict of soul. And it's one against the other. And the young people in the room, if you let Satan get the best of you, it's going to be, I've got to run from my parents and family and church, or else I'll never get to be me. But here's the problem. You won't get to be you if you give other people the some authority to define you, but you won't get to be you if you run from God-given structures either. So both are a loss, okay? But this is a false dichotomy. And it leaves you, when you unpack this, it's like, is there a better way? Is there an identity that fulfills my heart's dreams and desires as an individual and also plugs me into community and family and blesses the needs of others in honor? Is there an identity that it doesn't have to be either or? Is there an identity that is not performance-based or measured by my hard work and effort? And the answer is yes, okay? And the time remaining, that's what we call a gospel identity, okay? I want to contrast this because what Jesus is saying when he says, lose your life, he's essentially saying lose your attachment to fragile, losable, breakable understandings of who you are. Lose your right to self-identify and lose your defining attachment to everybody else's approval systems. Okay? He's saying lose your performance-based self. So the gospel identity is Jesus defines me. Okay? Jesus defines me. So how is this different? Well, your relationship with Jesus was based on his work, not yours. Okay? Your relationship with Jesus is you coming into reconciliation with your Creator. See, one of the reasons we go after traditional and modern identity so breathlessly and so with such fervor and dependence is we come into life ostracized from God. We don't know our Father. And so we're grasping for anchor points to tell us who we are. The problem is they're all shifting. And when they shift, it rocks our world. So Jesus came, died on the cross, made reconciliation possible, and gives you the ability to know your Father again. And so you're on this journey through life going, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. I am who they say I am. I am who I want to be. I am who I'm going to be one day. I'm going to pursue. And Jesus comes in and says, I know who you are. And one of the greatest passages of this is Jeremiah 1. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And I ordained thee to be a prophet unto sanctified and ordained thee. What is God saying to Jeremiah? Jeremiah, I know how I shaped you. I know your personality. I shaped you. I put you in that womb. I gave you purpose. I gave you value. You have individual, unique value. And I have called you to a community. Jeremiah, I'm plugging you in to ancient Israel at a critical juncture. Jeremiah was the last and most prominent prophet before the Babylonian exile. If you've ever read Daniel chapter 1 and asked yourself, how did Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego know to take a stand? How did they know that God was going to be with them? Let me tell you who taught them that. Jeremiah. Daniel was deported from Jeremiah's hometown. Anathoth is the village where Jeremiah was a priest kid. And he's like 15, sitting in a revival led by King Josiah, who was like 20 at the time. And he says, the word of the Lord came to me. It's like teen camp or a youth conference. And he's sitting there and God says, Jeremiah, you're going to be my messenger. And Jeremiah, read the book. We know him as the weeping prophet. Why? Because nobody listened to him. He never had measurable success. He never had a thriving church. He never had thriving fruit. He got thrown into a pit. He got rejected. He got betrayed. He was the enemy of the nation. Why? Because he's saying, give in to Babylon. Go with them. It would be the modern day equivalent of somebody standing up saying, yep, we should just give in to Afghanistan. We should just give in to ISIS. We should just give in. This is God judging us. That's what Jeremiah did. And everybody hated him. But somebody was listening to him. There was a group of remnant young people that when they got deported to Babylon, they took his message with them. So my point is, God knew what he was doing when he made Jeremiah unique in that place and time. And here's the thing. Okay, the snow shovel. It does have a design. It does have an identity. It does have a purpose. Not a work of art. It was engineered and designed for a purpose, to move snow. And if the snow shovel had a personality, if it could think, it wouldn't be happy hanging in an art museum. that would only be happy moving snow, okay? Here's my point. I'm being a little bit facetious, but you are designed by a creator. And you have intrinsic value, and you have unique purpose and calling. And you can't find that for yourself. You can't define that for yourself. That's an impossible, it's irrational. It's a completely incoherent proposition. You must be reconciled with your Creator and walking through life in a personal relationship with Jesus and living every day out of this knowledge. I am here by God's design. He accepts me as I am. And I'm not performing for an identity. I'm not living up to an identity. I have one. I wake up loved. I go to sleep loved. I wake up graced. I wake up as the object of God's mercy. He always loves me all the way. He doesn't love me more on my good days and less on my bad days. Now, some people are afraid of this message. Performance-based Christians are afraid of this message. Because, and some of you might even be sitting there thinking, he's giving these young people permission to go do whatever they want to do, and it's okay because they're forgiven and grace. That's grace gone wild. That's grace abused. That's grace misunderstood. Okay? Grace does not motivate us to sin more. When we get it, it motivates us to sin less. Okay? Why? Because the love of God is so fulfilling. The definition of God is so objective. It's so fixed. It's so permanent. You did nothing to earn it. You can do nothing to lose it. And when everything else in your life comes undone, you are still you by God's definition. So you can't lose this. And nothing that life can throw at you can shake this. Because Jesus is unshakable. And this is why Jesus said, in the world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And I'm sitting in bed with cancer and chemo saying, God, what are you doing? And the answer was, Philippians 1, the things that have happened unto me have fallen out rather unto the furtherance of the gospel. God said, Cary, I know you don't want to be cancer guy, and don't worry about it. You're not cancer guy. You're my child. And I'm giving you a stewardship. I'm giving you a trial, but it's not just a trial, it's a platform. So you can crawl under it and mope and cry and gripe and complain in self-pity, or you can climb on top of it and declare the gospel to people who will listen to you now because you're speaking from the jaws of suffering and death. And I'm like, oh my goodness, God, you didn't just give me a hard time, you handed me a megaphone. You see, when you have a gospel identity and life hands you a trial, God just handed you a megaphone. And I decided in that cancer, sure it was hard, sure we cried, sure we had dark days, but on my good days, on my clear days, on my rational, when my brain was working days, I decided to try to help other people understand that suffering was not the end of the world. And it wasn't the failure of God. I'll never forget doing a blog post and somebody forwarded it to somebody and they forwarded it to somebody and later I got an email from a guy in Afghanistan. This is when the fighting was raging. He actually was in Germany and he said, I'm getting ready to get shipped to Afghanistan. My buddies are dying. And he said, I'm afraid to die. And somebody forwarded me your blog post. And why are you not afraid to die? And I pointed him to the Done book. And 2 days later, he wrote me and he said, I'm shipping out tomorrow, but I read your Done book and I trusted Christ last night as my Savior. And I'm no longer afraid to die. And God said, see, Cary, the things which have happened unto you have fallen out rather unto the furtherance of the gospel. What's the point I'm making? If you have in the gospel, you have an identity that is unshakable. It's who God knows that you are. It's who God is making you to be. It's everything in Him that He's designed for you to become and be in this life. And it is durable no matter what. You can never lose it. It is, and here's the beautiful thing about it, okay? Jesus said to Peter, follow me, and I will make you, okay, fishers of men, right? But just pause and just stop and think about the phrase, follow me and I will make you. You know what we hear? Follow me and you better make yourself. Okay? And here's what I love about this, okay? The disciples, the process goes like this: losing, finding, flourishing. Jesus said, lose to find. Okay? How do you lose? Well, I'm going to warn you. Jesus is going to do this work in your life whether you want him to or not. Okay? And he does it different ways in all of us. And you don't need to be afraid of it. Okay? Please hear me. If you don't get anything else, I hope you'll remember me saying these words. Don't be afraid of tribulation in this life. I don't want cancer again, but I'm truly not afraid of it. Because cancer showed me who my God is at such a deeper level. I'll close with a story in a minute that'll drive it, I hope, to your heart. We fear, we try every way we can to avoid discomfort and insecurity and tribulation, and that's good and fine. But it's impossible. The world is fragile. You are fragile. If your identity is in your looks, give it 20 years. You think you're young and beautiful and all that, in 25 or 30 years, you'll look like this. Okay, it's pretty bad, okay? Unless you're my wife or some of these ladies that just don't age, it's like everybody thinks Dana's my daughter. If your identity is in your ability to perform, just one stroke, one health crisis, one disability, you're shattered. If your identity is in your family, one loss, and I'm not just saying grief, it's unrecoverable grief. If your identity is in the gospel, there's still grief. Loss is still loss. It's painful, but it's not suicidal. It's not despairing. It's grieving and going through it, but I'm still me, and I still have purpose, and Jesus still values me, and I'm going to see that loved one again soon, and I can go on in my purpose. So we're going to lose our fragile identity structures. One way or another, we're going to lose them. But to me, the most beautiful part of this, in some sense, is that it takes who I want to be and who others need me to be, and it puts them together. Okay? It honors my uniqueness in God's design, but then God's providence takes that uniqueness and plugs me in where he places me. You see, you're here or in your church or whatever church you're part of, God put you there. God gave you the abilities, the gifts. You don't want to glory in them. You want to use them as gifts from him. You don't want to find your identity in I'm a deacon or I'm a teacher or I'm this or that. That's a bad place. That's traditional. You want to find your identity as I'm a child of God, and I get the privilege to serve this community. And here's when individuality meets community, it's as full as you can be. The highest being in the universe sets his love upon you, declares you valuable, significant, secure. The highest being in the universe. Suddenly, you have all the acceptance you could ever need. You have all the affirmation you could ever want. You have all the purpose you could ever live out in eternal value. And suddenly, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of you. You're not looking at other people saying, validate me, love me, bless me, affirm me, secure me, I need. No, you wake up and you go at life this way. I'm full. How can I bless you? How can I serve you? How can I affirm you? We all wake up, we all walk into a room going one direction or the other. We're either living for validation or from it. We're either living for love or from it. Living for acceptance or from it. God's done a work in our church that's, to me, it's unusual. Frankly, it's a little bit out of my comfort zone. We're doing stuff that I've not seen done in the churches I grew up in, and it's cost me some friends. They've criticized me. They've slandered me. Some people lie about me. Frankly, this book, as I was working with the publisher, I teach and use the King James Version of the Bible. They said, if we're going to publish you, we want you to use a newer version. You pick it, but we want you to do that. And I really wrestled with that. Not because I think I was sinning, but because I have so many friends that are going to shoot me. Because it's more than a preference, it's an identity to them. And I had, actually, my agent said, why are you so uptight about this? I said, because I already get a lot of criticism and take a lot of heat that I don't have the emotional bandwidth to process, so I just kind of check out on it. But this is like handing those same people another rock and saying, would you just throw this one at me now? Would you just, like right here, hit me right here, you know? And literally God broke me down because that book started this way. God, I don't have a publisher right now, and I don't have to write, but if you want me to write, you have to send me an opportunity. That's how it started. Like, God, I'm not going to write another book unless you send me an opportunity. I came back in the house. I took a long walk with God. I came to Dana. I said, Dana, I'm at great peace. I love being a pastor. I love being your husband. And I just gave writing back to God. I don't think he wants me to write anymore. 2 weeks later, I'm on the phone with Moody Publications. I'm like, what? How in the world? So God's like, Cary, I opened this door for you. You totally surrendered, and I opened the door. And now you're going to use the fear of man against, the open door for me. And so I realized I had to release the approval of others to follow Jesus as my Lord. And you will too. And it's only knowing that he totally affirms and accepts you that gives you the ability to do that without resenting, without scorning and despising the people that would criticize you. Okay? That's a gospel identity. I got to wrap this up. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Let me say a couple closing things, then I'll tell you the end of Larry's story and one final anecdote. Traditional identity asks this always: what do other people want me to do? Even under the guise of God. And sometimes one of our great challenges in Bible-believing churches is that we grab Jesus and we bring him into a traditional identity structure, and our kids think the gospel is just another thing they need to run from. Okay. The story of the prodigal son. You have two brothers, two sons. You have one that is stuck in a traditional identity, the good son. And I always heard that story this way: don't be the bad son, be the good son. But the real truth of the story is don't be either son. They're both bad. Okay? The good son, quote unquote, is secretly scornful of his father, keeping his dad's rules so he can leverage his dad's money. That's wicked. And it's the same thing as believers in modern day, jumping through God's hoops so we can leverage God's blessings. And when it breaks, we go, God, I deserve better than that. You failed me. You let me down. And we're really disappointed with God. So the older son they're both alienated. They're both ostracized from their father. The older brother represents the Pharisees. Okay, who were leveraging God's laws to exploit people and get rich and oppress the common Israelite. Okay, and that's why the Pharisees hated Jesus, because he was exposing all of that. So the good son, alienated from his dad, to that son, his dad was a slave taskmaster who greedy, only doling out blessings as the work was done. The young son was the modern identity. The young son said, I'm not going to go by your rules anymore. Give me my money and I'm out. And he liberated himself. And he ended up like Elsa, alone. In a kingdom of isolation. What did Elsa do? She eventually came right back around to community, and she became the good queen of Arendelle. because she needed her people. And the story does come full circle. Well, in the prodigal story, the rebellious, the defiant, the liberating son reaches bottom and realizes the modern narrative, that's an ancient story, but modern in terms of our day, didn't work either, and he needs his dad. And he remembers his dad is a gracious man and a generous man. And the story is sad because the young son is the only one of the two that actually experiences the true heart of his father. He goes back wanting to work his way back, not into sonship, work his way back just into being able to live in the village as a hired laborer. So this is what we do. God, can I work my way to your approval, even though I'm saved? See, legalism has two faces. One form of legalism is work to get saved. The other form of legalism is work to stay saved or work to pay off your debt. And we even sing it sometimes, all to him I owe. Which I get it, I get the intent of that, but literally in heaven, you do not have a ledger sheet that you're paying on. God's not entering payments. You're not whittling down your balance, okay? That balance is so big you could never begin to even think about it. You just fall down and go, thank you, God, for your mercy, okay? But the young son comes back and is immediately reinstated as a son. And his inheritance is fully reinstated, which is why the older brother is seething angry and screaming at his dad because he can't imagine his dad being that generous and that gracious and that forgiving. So this gospel identity is me being wrapped up in the generous heart of God and finding the totality of my fulfillment in that love and not from anything else in life. So Larry's story was essentially, his memory came back, but the pivotal moment was me saying, find your identity in me. I know who you are. Stop trying to figure it out for yourself and trust me. Lay your head back and rest. Sounds like Jesus. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Learn of me. I am meek and lowly of heart. Take my yoke upon you. I think I rearranged that, but my yoke is easy and my burden is light. See, the traditional and modern identity is heavy. Oh, you're always working hard. It's exhausting. Gospel identity, I am who Jesus says I am. I'm free to live in his acceptance and love, and that love motivates me to honor him, to serve others, to live generously, selflessly, lavishly, and find great fulfillment in him. Now, last story and I'm done. I have a grandson, grand twins, Chad and Charlie. Charlie's the girl, Chad's the boy. And they're about 3.5, coming into 4. We do a big family vacation down to Orlando. We rent a house. We're going to go to the theme parks a couple of days. But at this house, this is in a neighborhood, and in the middle of this neighborhood is a water park. Slides and splash pad, big pool, and this big lazy river. And we've been psyching these kids up all the drive. We did a long drive down to Orlando and getting them all psyched up. And Hillary, my daughter-in-law, has gone out and bought, swimming, arm wing, what are they called? Swimmies and floaties and life vest and shoes. I mean, Chad comes out of his room that morning. We're going to go to the lazy river in the pool. He's dressed, he's decked out in Cars Inc. swimming paraphernalia. This kid looks like he's cut right out of a catalog. I mean, he is so decked out in swimming gear. Goggles, gear, head to toe, it all matches, it's all red and blue. I mean, you would think this kid is a professional swimmer. We get to the pool. Charlie's ironic. She's hilarious. She's got no sense of danger. She thinks she's a dolphin. She jumps into pools and, she has no fear of water. Chad, on the other hand, I'm watching him. He walks over to the edge of the pool, and this pool is, in his eyes, it just must have been a vast ocean of danger. And then right off the edge of the pool is the lazy river and the current. And you got to grab the tubes and you ride it. It's really fun. And so Chad is standing at the edge of the pool looking out at that, and he's got all the gear. So he's got Whether traditional or modern, he's got his identity. I am a swimmer. I am a Disney swimmer, okay? I am a Lightning McQueen swimmer, okay? But now he's looking at the water, and he's not so sure, okay? And I see his chest start to heave with nervousness. Oh no, this is scary. And I'm Papa. So I walk up behind him, I grab him by the arm, I scoop him up into my arms, and I say, come on, Chad, Papa will take you. And I wade out into the water. Well, when I do that, Chad panics. And now he's breathing heavily, and he's clutching onto my torso, and he's climbing my torso like a tree. Because the water is coming up, okay, as I'm wading out into the water, and his legs, every time they touch the water, his legs are moving higher. So it's like I've got an orangutan strapped to my head and neck, okay? He's climbing up, and I'm working him down. I'm trying to peel his, it's like the kid grew 4 more legs and arms. I'm peeling him off my body, and every time I move one appendage, the other one's gripping, and I'm working him down into the water, and he's resisting. No, Papa, no, Papa, Papa, no, Papa, no, Papa, Papa. Okay. And just to pause the story, when God starts to intervene in your life and peel back the layers of your identity, that's kind of how you react. No, don't move that, don't change that. Not that job, not that place. We work ourselves into places of security that are even bad for us. A job that's got us working too many hours, neglecting our family, that's not good. But we think it's the only thing we can, we're holding on to it for dear life. So Chad's climbing, and I'm putting him back into the water, and I realize this fear is going to wreck his whole vacation. Like there is an entire world of fun and laughter and joy out there in that water that he's not going to get to participate in unless I help him understand what this is. So as I'm going into the water, I'm lowering him and I'm pushing him down into the water. He's protesting the whole time. I peel his legs off his arms. I finally am holding him out like this, where he can't really reach me. And he's like, no, Papa, no. And I start to lower him into the water. The water's 3 feet. He's like 3, this water comes up to here. He can stand up. He doesn't know it. We're right where the current for the lazy river is, and I start to lower him into the water, and I start to let his feet go out behind him, and I start to I have his shoulders, and I let his arms slide down through my hands. He's like, Papa, Papa, no. And I grab his hands. And I'm looking at his face now, and I'm down here at the water level, and I'm saying, Chad, stand up. He's not hearing me. Chad, stand up. He's not hearing me. Chad, calm down. Stand up. Papa, he's crying, Papa, Papa. You know, my wife thinks I'm torturing him. She's all grace, I'm all law. Somehow we made it work. Okay. So I realize I can only do one thing, okay? And it's going to terrify him. It's going to terrify him for half a second. But then it's going to totally transform him. I've got to let go of his hands. And in a split second, I've got to grab his ankles. And I've got to pull his ankles down. So, this is what I do. I let go of his hands. He's sure that I have just thrown him to death. I reach down and grab his ankles, and now I start to pull them down, and the look on his face is like, my Papa's killing me. He really was like, Papa's killing me. And this is all in a fraction of a second, and I'm down under the water now, and I grab his ankles, and I plant them on the concrete of the swimming pool, and my face is that far from his face, right about here where the water is. And I've got his ankles down here, and I smile at him. And I go, stand up. And he pauses. And you can see his brain. And he stands up. Now the water's up about here. And he goes, oh. And he looks at me, and he's totally released. And for the next 8 days, he swam. He loved it. But it had to be the oh moment. Now, I got to stop. Track the followers of Jesus after the crucifixion. They're devastated. There for 3 days in that space where Chad is while I'm letting him go. All of their dreams are crushed. They're not who they thought they were because Jesus is not who they thought he was. He's a failure. He's a disappointment. 3 days. I just want to talk to them in heaven. Tell me about that 3 days. God, why did you let them sit there for 3 days? Why not resurrect like a few hours later or the next day? Why let them sit there? Why let Paul sit there 3 days blind in Damascus? Sitting there stewing, fear, panic. And then he resurrects. And most of them are transformed almost immediately. Peter is in Galilee. And there's this John 21 interaction where Jesus comes to Peter. And that whole interaction, I believe, I write about in the book, is Peter has lost his identity at that point. He has no idea who he is. He's just gone back to fishing. He's no revolutionary. He's not the courageous warrior he thought he was. So he's just going back to fishing. But Jesus comes and says, feed my sheep. I know who you are. You have value. You have significance. Get back in the game. And then you go to Acts. Peter's preaching. 3,000 people get saved. I think they're looking around going, somebody's got to talk here. Peter, why not you? Okay, all right, I'll give it a try. I don't think Peter was like, I'm ready to do this. Everybody buckle up. It's going to be, watch what I'm about to do. I think Peter was as surprised as everybody else was. I think they were shocked at what happened. There's this moment where the ascension. Everybody in town wants them dead. Jesus is gone. And they're going back to town high-fiving and hugging and celebrating. They're like elated. But everybody wants them dead. Do you see what happened? There was this moment where their feet hit solid ground. They suddenly realized, oh, we're secure. Like, game on, God wins, and we're here for a mission. And so we truly can be fearless now. This is my last thought. Get this. They didn't work at this. It grew up in them. They realized it. It was, oh, I don't have to work at being somebody. Oh, God, oh. And I pray that as you process everything we've talked about tonight, a gospel identity will be an experience, where the world is shifting around you and fearful, but God grabs you by the ankles and shows you the solid ground that's always right under you. And then he says, stand up and go make a difference in the world. Let's pray together. And thank you so much for giving me the time to speak into your life and the extra time. I'm sorry I went late. God, thank you that the gospel is not just how we get saved, it's also how we are defined. It's where we find everyday security, acceptance, and significance. It is where we bask in your love. It is where we remember your forgiveness and grace. It is where we find the ocean of love and forgiveness and grace that we operate out of so that we can live selflessly loving everybody around us. It realizes our truest individuality by your grace and plugs us into significant purposes in this life that matter for all of eternity. God, thank you for that. Teach us about it. Grow us in it. And let us have this Chad experience of feeling our feet hit solid ground when we're in the middle of loss or fear or turmoil or chaos. Our feet on solid ground where we can stand up and live out of the gospel. Thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Cary. Let's thank him. And that truth, as we understand it and continue to grow in it, can be revolutionary to understand this Christian life isn't something that we're just constantly trying to achieve. It's a free gift that we have received, our identity in Christ. And what I want to do Cary, I'm going to have you, if you'll turn his mic back on, I'm going to have you, while we're passing these books out, tell us if you've enjoyed his teaching or preaching ministry today. He does a daily podcast, as well as there's a podcast on the website with his sermon series. We talked about the family ones yesterday. I'll ask the men to come through. We want to go one per family unit, so maybe just raise your hand up to help the men. And if we run out, we had a great crowd show up tonight. If we run out, let's get a list of the names of who we've run out, and we'll get those this week and get them to you. So you hold your hand up until your family unit gets a book. And while we're doing that, Pastor Cary, tell us your podcast and anything else you'd like to share.
I would like you to know the book is available in digital format and audio format as well, if that works better for you or for someone you love. And Moody let me do the reading, which was a privilege. And so that's available on Amazon or any of these other outlets. Secondly, if you just go to my blog, CarySchmidt.com, you'll see links there. I don't write a ton of blog posts, but there are links there to pretty much everything else we're doing as a ministry. So our church has a podcast. I do a daily devotion for our church family, primarily just through COVID. We're going through Psalms. Psalms is God's medicine chest for our hearts and the place to process human emotions and experience. So we're just going slow walking through Psalms. It's about 10 minutes a day. It goes live at noon every day, and then it archives. And then I do a leadership podcast called Leading in the Gospel, and we just unpack how does the gospel impact our leadership philosophy of ministry or secular leadership? How does the love of Christ shape us as leaders? And then other books are available on Amazon or other places.
All right, thank you. So he's got the leadership podcast, Leading in the Gospel, the daily devotional podcast, and then, of course, his preaching messages each week in the series he's going through in his church are available online through podcasts or archives and things. So Cary Schmidt, SCHMIDT.com. You can find the links to all of that. Do we miss any family units with the book? Any family units at all did not get a copy of the book? Make sure that everybody's got one. Anybody at all? Make sure we have that. All right. Well, we've gone. Make sure you thank the child care workers. That's a long service for them to be watching kids that whole time when they go. Be appreciative of their work there. And to get a chance, Pastor Cary, we'll have you hang out up here, and folks would like to chat with you. I thought of you, Jan. He told me his daughter, who just got married, she writes for through the Bible. I said you need to connect and the ministry your dad had there. But thank you for being here tonight. I hope that today was a blessing to you, and I know it was a blessing and encouragement to me. We'll see you this week. Have a wonderful, wonderful week as we live out the gospel in our lives.